to another webinar for IPSE, the Association of Independent Professional and the Self-Employed. My name is Luan. I'm your speaker for the next 30 minutes or so. I'm really pleased to be talking today on the topic of creating content for social media success. Now, this is a workshop that I actually ran at the IPSE's National Freelancers Day in June, a very popular session on the day, so we thought we'd rerun it as a webinar. I will talk for about 30 minutes and we will have plenty of time for Q&A. So please do pop them in the box, in the questions box or the chat box. We will keep an eye on those as we go through the session. If there's any burning questions or issues with technology or anything, otherwise I have got time at the end of the session to take your questions. So we are recording, just double checking, we are recording this session, so you will get a copy of the recording and the slides, and I have got plenty of resources in the slide deck for you as well. So in case you haven't listened to one of my webinars or met me at National Freelancers Day before, this is me. I've got 20 years experience in agency, client side and consultancy marketing roles. I've run my own business now for 8 years. I celebrated my business birthday just last weekend on the 1st of September. I am a chartered marketer. I'm a fellow of the Chartered Institute of Marketing, and I've worked mainly in B2B, but also some B2C services and products. Over the last few years of my career, I have been really interested in social media and how we can use that as a marketing channel, to the point where I've written 2 books on it, Relax, It's Only Social Media, and The Social Media Planner. I'm really excited that I actually am involved directly with some of the platforms. I am one of LinkedIn Learning's course instructors. So if you have a premium LinkedIn account and you can access their online learning platform, then I've got 7 courses in there on marketing, content marketing, social media topics. I'm also part of Enterprise Nation's campaign, She Means Business, which means I'm an accredited trainer for Facebook and Instagram. I am a coach for Google's Digital Garage initiative. I love doing this stuff. I love doing the train the trainer and meeting people and getting out there and sharing this kind of content. And of course, I am also an ambassador for IPSE. So, content. Bill Gates. This quote feels like yesterday when you look at the date, depends what age group you're in, but also it's not. It's a long time ago. He coined the phrase content is king back in 1996. And he said that creating compelling online content will be the key to success in the digital age. And I think he was right. Well, I know he's right. You know, social media is a huge marketing channel now for businesses, for people to communicate with their friends and family. But there's one thing in setting up your profiles, making decisions over what social media platforms to use, but then you're kind of staring at the screen, and whether it's your desktop or your mobile phone, going, what do I write? What do I share? What do I need to talk about? And what have I got that's relevant to the world? What do people want to know about? So the agenda for today, in just 30 minutes, I'm going to talk about some different types of content to be aware of. I'm going to talk specifically in this session about written content and visual content. I'm going to go through how to create ideas and find ideas for your content so that you don't worry about staring at a blank screen. And I've got some top tips for things to think about before you post on social media. So let's start with content types, and I break this down into 4 different types of content. Some is quicker content to produce, some takes a lot longer. What would be relevant if we had a longer session would be to talk about the kind of content that's useful for people when they're first becoming aware of you, when they don't know about you, versus the kind of more detailed content that they may need as they're ready to buy from you. But to just kind of look at these 4 types overall, written content, which is probably what we think of most of the time, particularly when it comes to writing tweets or writing posts for social media. But it is about blogs. It is about longer form content that we might link to, such as white papers, guides, checklists and reports. It is about written presentations. And if you really go in depth, it's down to ebooks and books as well. So different lengths, different formats, but written content is hugely popular. And for many of us, it's the first place where we start. But increasingly popular, and we see this through the social media platform Instagram, is visual content. Whether this is product imagery, and some people find this much easier to produce if they have physical products. But also what's really important is people pictures, pictures of your team, pictures of behind the scenes, what you're doing, what you're working on, where you're at. I very often take photos of myself at events with the room, with other people, just kind of, show what my day-to-day world looks like. But also visually, and can work really well, is infographics. That's where you kind of create graphics out of headline numbers and stats and things like that, because sometimes it can be easier for people to digest the information if it's in graphical format. Audio and video content, we know both of these are increasingly popular as well. I don't know if any of you listen to podcasts. I quite often listen to them in the car on long journeys. Event coverage, right now, this is an audio piece of content, but I will be talking and turning it into a piece of video content and a piece of blog content. I'll talk about that shortly. Audio and video is great for demonstrations, how to use your content, how to, those how-to guides rather than having manuals, interviews, webinars, all really engaging content. And some people prefer to learn via audio and video rather than reading books. And then another type of content that I think is quite important to consider, does take long to produce, does take long to think about. I think ideas should come before content types, but think about quizzes and calculators, polls, games, competitions. Competitions is a great way to attract more people to your Facebook pages, to your Instagram accounts, is to give something away and encourage people to enter. Quick polls, are you watching this program? What do you think of it? Who would you vote for? We'll see those popping up all over social media in terms of, who's your favorite on Strictly Come Dancing on Saturday evenings. But also think about quizzes. I can't see you in the audience, but do you remember perhaps reading kind of Cosmopolitan magazine and all those kind of quizzes where you had to answer mostly A's, mostly B's, mostly C's? You can move some of this kind of content online, ask people, get them to calculate things, really interactive stuff that's going to engage them with your content and your website and your business. So there are 4 different types of content. I can't talk about all of them today. I'm going to talk about written and visual specifically. But something to also consider when you're talking about content, just a second, is whether it's time related or what we call evergreen. And I believe that to be successful on social media or your website or any other platform that you're using content is to have a mixture of both. Evergreen content, basically it's kind of like the trees. It's stuff that's continually relevant. It doesn't become dated. It's stuff that you can keep sharing time and time again, that is related to your business. It's probably some kind of how-to, FAQ kind of content. It's your core content that you can keep coming back to that doesn't date. But also we know that social media is all about being in the moment and real time. So if we can create any content that's time related, that's really great too. Some of that we can pre-plan because we know things are happening. For example, my business birthday, that was a milestone. It was time related. I could post about that on the day. Awareness days. I can't remember what awareness days are happening this month, but there's lots of awareness days happening all of the time. I've got a link to a directory you can have a look through at the end. That can make great content as well, but also to have a look on the day, particularly at Twitter, see what's trending, what's happening in the news right now. Is there something relevant to your business that you can get involved in? Obviously, that's kind of got a shorter shelf life, which is why you need the evergreen content to balance it out as well. But to have that mixture of 2 across written, video, visual, audio, interactive content is really good to consider. So let's just take a look first at written content. Some tips here in terms of if you're writing blogs. So writing comes easy to some people, not to some others. I think what's really important is that you just don't sweat it. You don't overthink it. You write as you speak. One of the best pieces of advice I had from LinkedIn as I was learning how they wanted to write their video and online learning content is just write as you speak and as if you were having a cup of coffee and explaining something to someone. But when you do come to kind of format it into a blog, you do need a headline. Blogs are great, written content is great if you can kind of back up your thoughts and opinions and your topic with some stats, with some quotes, perhaps from your customers, perhaps from famous people like the Bill Gates quote I included at the beginning. If you can break your written content down so it's really easy to read, particularly on social media and on screen, people kind of read quite quickly, they scroll past it. So if you can include any subheadings, any bullets, any numbered lists, it just makes it easier for people to scan and to digest the content. Do include links. Perhaps that's links to other content on your own website, so more detail about a topic, or links to third-party websites and additional information. And whatever you're doing, because I'm talking to you about using content for business, don't forget to include a call to action. At the bottom of your blog content or any written content, include a call to action. Tell people what you want them to do next. Do you want them to share it? Do you want them to get in touch with you? Do you want them to give you some feedback on the ideas that you're sharing? Tell people what you want them to do, and then they're much more likely to do it. And it kind of helps you keep in mind that you have got a purpose to creating this content. And the next level of any content that you're producing, particularly on your website, is to think about not just the call to action next steps, but can you upgrade people? Can you give them something more that they may be then willing to share their information? And by a content upgrade, I'm thinking perhaps a blog that then says, and if you want to download all of this in a handy guide or a checklist, then you could ask their email address and give them a content upgrade, which is a download document. It's kind of the next step, it's something more valuable. So after you've written a blog, maybe think about, can I add more to this? Can I add a next step that's of more value to my audience, but also of extra value to my business as well, because I can get some information from the people reading it. Now, a couple of tools that could help you with your written content. Again, I say kind of don't overthink it, but there are some tools out there that can help you take you to the next stage. And that is here from CoSchedule. It's free. It's a headline analyzer. So once you've written your headline, you could cut and paste it into this tool, and it will give you some tips. It will give it a score, but it will also give you some tips on how you might be able to improve that headline. Another tool, not in the slide deck, but I can add it at the end, that you may find useful if you are worried about spelling and grammar, then a tool I highly recommend for that is a tool called Grammarly, where again, you can cut and paste your written content into it and it will mark it up with typos and grammar errors to help you amend it. Another tool that I regularly recommend to people is rev.com. I'm actually using it right now to record what I'm saying, and what I'll do is I'll then upload it for $1 a minute and get a transcription. Now, I could just be typing this out as a blog, but because I'm already delivering it as a webinar, why not record it, upload the transcription, and then I'll be able to edit that into a blog piece later on. Some people who writing isn't their best skill, or perhaps they're not the expert and they need to engage with their colleagues for details, then perhaps put down the pen and paper, set up the record app, rev.com on your phone, record the conversation. Find it much easier to edit a transcript than sometimes having that blank sheet of paper staring at you. That's my top tip. So visual content, let's talk about this for a little bit. Visual content, as I said, increasingly popular, particularly by younger audiences, people with, we're scrolling through our phones much quicker. We're looking for a thumb-stopping moment, something to grab our attention. And that's because visual content can be processed 60,000 times faster than text. So if we can add any visuals to our content on social media, then that can really help to get that thumb-stopping moment and to engage people as well. Now, I'm going to talk about image sources in a moment, and I know that there is quite often a question around, well, if I put an image on here, then it doesn't reach as many people. I would again argue, don't overthink it. If you have an image to go with something, post an image. If your social media post is about you visiting number 10 or you speak into a room full of people at an event, you're going to have an image, so why not post it? I think it's far better to focus on engaging with your audience than perhaps going, oh, well, someone told me that, an image doesn't get as much engagement. If it helps you tell your story, I'd highly recommend using images. If you don't have an image for something, then I wouldn't sweat it. I would just post that written content. So some sources for images that you may turn to if you're not the best photographer or don't have loads of images to reflect your business, or you want to build it up over time. The top three are free royalty-free image libraries. So that means that you can use those images in your content, on your website, on social media without paying and without worrying about whether there's copyright issues. So those websites are Unsplash, Pixabay, and Vectorstock. 3 that I use regularly and 3 that I'd recommend. Some other tools that you might find useful for creating visuals for your website, for your social media, is Canva. There is a free version and there's a paid for version. A paid for version, as you can see, that's a screenshot at the top right there, means that you'll be able to add your brand colors, add your own fonts, etc. onto it and create some brand guidelines around it. If you want to create some images, you can drag and drop, you can upload your photography, you can put some text on there. Canva is a brilliant tool for that. And WordSwag, which is the image bottom right, is a great app. You can use it, you can find images and then you can put some text typography over the top of it. Great for highlighting new blogs, great for sharing stats, great for sharing quotes. And if you really like kind of GIFs and memes in your content, then Giphy and Meme Generator are 2 websites where you'll be able to find some content for that as well. So depends on how you work, depends on your products and services. Some of you may find imagery really easy versus written. Some may be the other way around, but here's some sources that can really help you with your visual content. I would suggest, particularly if it's for Instagram as social media, that you plan out your content first. You think about kind of creating yourself a bit of a style guide. And by that, it could mean that you have some consistent colors that you use in all your imagery, that you do think about fonts that you're going to use so that you're consistent in that, that you think about the kind of photos and illustrations you're using so that there is some kind of consistency. I love, if you look at Martha Brooke London, where this screenshot is from, everything she does is highly visual. It's about her products, but it has some element of pink in there. It just draws the reader. It's easier to digest if it's not quite so random between every image that you share, to have a style guide. And it just makes life easy that you don't have to think about it if you know that you're always going to find images with this color in or this text over the top. And that really relates to your tone of voice, which is as relevant for written content, video, audio content, as it is for imagery, that you portray whether you are sophisticated, whether you're authoritative, whether you're fun, that your tone of voice for your brand and your business and your personality comes across in every piece of content that you produce. Now, there is just one challenge with visual content, particularly for social media, and that is that every platform is slightly different and needs something slightly different. So here's a link here to a tool. It's from Sprout Social. I believe that for me, it's my great reference. I have it bookmarked, that the image sizes that you need for social media, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, they're always kept up to date on this Google Doc. So I'd recommend that you click that link after the session and that you save that. So when you're creating anything, whether it's for the header images, whether it's for a story, whether it's for the feed, that you can make sure that you get your photo and imagery the right size. Now, I've talked throughout this session about how I'm recording a piece of audio content right now, how I'm going to be uploading this as a piece of video with the voiceover onto my YouTube channel, that I'm going to be repurposing this into a blog because I'm recording it and will transcribe it. I'll probably have some checklists that I can add to the end as an upgrade as well. What's really important is, you know, it can take some time to create ideas for your content. So don't just think, oh, I've created it once, job done. Think about how you may be able to repurpose a piece of content into different formats. People like content in different formats. Some people like writing, some people like audio, some people like visuals. So why not think of taking that one idea and that one content piece and then repurposing it into different formats? Lots of tools available for that. Some I've already shared, but it could be visual, it could be these slide decks, etc. But just think about taking that idea and creating it more than once. Now that's kind of, I've covered types of content and what you might do, but you're probably still thinking, where's the ideas? What am I going to create here? Well, Seth Godin, who is one of my favorite authors of all time, he's got some brilliant content and some brilliant books out there. One of his quotes is, "Marketing is no longer about the stuff that you make, but about the stories you tell." And we probably see this quite a lot on social media in terms of the narrative, people talking about where they are, what they're doing, what they're creating. So it's really important to kind of think about what stories you can tell, because in turn you will sell on the back of your kind of constant narrative of what you're doing, what you're working on, and building up the picture of what you're an expert in and what it is that you do. A great text, a book that I would recommend if you want to get into how to define your story, how to tell your story, is this book called Building a Story Brand. And basically in building a story brand, the author takes you through the steps to create your story, to identify your story. And we probably recognize this from books we read in childhood or fiction books that we read, that every story has a character. Now, as a freelancer, that's probably going to be you or your customer. Your customer, the character, has a problem and they meet their guide, which is you, who will then give them a plan and calls them to action that ends in success, helps them avoid failure and transforms them in some way. So your target customer will have an issue or a challenge that you can help them with that takes them from A to B. Now, I haven't got time to kind of talk about stories in this session. I want to allow some time for Q&A. Highly recommend that book. It has some online resources and actually does help you to create your business story to give you the content platform to ride on in everything you're doing on social media. Other places for ideas for your content, once you know your underlying story, just think about the FAQs you get asked all the time, whether that's when you meet people face to face at networking events or talks, or questions that come into your inbox via your website. FAQ content is great core evergreen content that people will be looking for and people want answered. It may seem really basic to you, but if people have questions, then answer them. Your colleagues can be a source. If you're a freelancer, if you don't have colleagues, then think of that about your peers. They may be able to help you if you have a coffee with them, talk about the challenges and the questions that you regularly get asked. Look at what your competitors are doing. Not to say copy your competitors, that's kind of, that's not fair game, but think about what they're doing. You may consider that they've, the content around your FAQs and your products and services has already been created, but it's not got your take on it, your story, your unique opinion on it. So do use your competitors as insight around what kind of content you could produce, but please don't copy them. Produce something that's got your opinion, insight, and your take on it. Do turn to professional bodies and trade associations for information, for content ideas. You may be able to, for example, create a blog piece around some industry research that IPSE or Enterprise Nation or the Chartered Institute of Marketing, for example, have recently produced. And listening on social media to what the people that you're following are posting about, to what your customers are posting about. Once you start to have a look and you sit down and go, I need to create some ideas, you'll find lots of information. I do this session in one-to-one classes, and actually we end up with so many ideas. That's not the problem. But we need to have done the initial planning of what's the story our business tells, who do we want to talk to, and what do they need to know about our business. Now, if you're a little bit stuck on this and you would like an online tool, don't be concerned about the picture, but Answer the Public is a brilliant tool. Answerthepublic.com, there's a free version, there's a paid for version. And basically, when you enter your keyword into the box along the bottom, Answer the Public will give you information that's taken from Google searches and Bing searches to give you ideas around content. So for example, if I was to put in that box LinkedIn, it would bring up for me all the questions that are asked online about LinkedIn. And Answer the Public will generate that in terms of who, why, what, where, when, and how questions. And I can download that as a CSV file. Now, I think that's hugely helpful. Not all of it will be relevant, but as a starting point of what kind of questions people are asking around my topic, Answer the Public is the first place that I go every time. So I really would suggest giving it a go. And this guy moves around and looks at you, but I think that's a good tone of voice and a character for that website, and it makes it memorable. So I've talked about different types of content. I've talked about written content, visual content, giving you some tools. There is just one thing to come back to before you post on social media, any content. And I would suggest that this is a bit of a checklist for you, in that you think before you post. You think about who will see it. You know, who is it you're aiming at? This isn't about you, this is about your audience. So is what you're posting relevant to them? Do please think about, and I see lots of, you know, if you've ever heard my social media do's and don'ts presentation, you'll see this. What does this post say about me or about my company? You know, does it reflect well on you? Sometimes, would it be better to send it as a private message? You know, the world don't need to see everything. It may be that it's more personal to a client or a friend or a peer, that you send something one-to-one rather than in the public domain. Always do think that if you're sharing content from other people, is it from a credible source? You know, read it before you share it and check, you know, what exactly it says about your topic, what insight it gives, and is it from a credible, you know, trusted source. And if you are sharing content from other people, which is absolutely fine to do, I'm sure there'll be a Q&A about that in a second, you know, give some additional insight or opinion to give some context, you know, tell people why you're sharing it to your audience. And the good thing is that this means that you don't need to create everything that you're sharing on social media, but you do just need to kind of have this thought process around other content that you're using. So in summary, which gives us 5 minutes for questions, if you're sticking around, my summary around creating content for social media success is that you are visible, whether that's written, audio, video, interactive, but you are visible in terms of posting content consistently. You need to kind of make this a habit and post something regularly rather than kind of dipping in and out. And I think freelancers in particular are really guilty of kind of being really active when they're not busy, and then when they get new projects, get new clients, they get their head down, immersed in the work. New business never goes in line with those yo-yos of your own workload. So I would argue that if you have a plan, if you know what kind of content you're going to share and where you're going to share it, but you just make it a habit and do things little and often rather than kind of big peaks and troughs. And if you know your audience, then it's going to be much easier that you're creating content for them, what's relevant for them, what they need to know about your business to do business with you at some point. And tell stories. People engage with stories, they like stories, they share stories far more than they will read my blog. You know, my business birthday, people did say congratulations, they did share it, they did comment on it, they did send me messages because it was part of my business story that people could engage with far more than perhaps, you know, here's my webinar on Monday kind of content. You need a mixture, but it's the stories that people like. And then it means that you are authentic and you are you, and people buy from you versus everyone else, you know, like you. That's what they want. They want to engage with the stories that you're telling. And less is more. Do think about repurposing your existing content, or when you're creating new content, create it with repurposing into other formats in mind. And in terms of your time, I would say spend 20% on creating content and 80% of your time on pushing it out there, whether that's through podcasts, through videos on YouTube, through social media. Don't just post it once, keep repeating it and repeating it, but focus your efforts on that, not all of it on, I've got to create a new blog every week, I've got to write new blogs, tick it off the list. The distribution is the really important part of content marketing. So that is my slides for today. Thank you for listening. I have got some more resources that you'll see in the slide deck when it comes over to you. But if there's any questions, then please do tap them away in that Q&A box right now for me. So I'm straight in there today. Okay, devil in the detail, brilliant question. How can I find the right hashtags for Instagram and find the hashtags my audience uses to find content like mine? So I have got a blog on hashtags, so I will add that to this further info slide for you. There's a couple of tools that I recommend using. One is called hashtagify.me and one is called Tagomatic. as a phone app. It does take some research. Tools are great for research, but more often I would also just consider, looking at what hashtags your competitors are using. If you're following some of your customers and you can see what hashtags they're using, then have a look at that. There's not a quick win. It is about research, and you'll see lots of advice out there around using really popular hashtags versus really niche hashtags. So it's about getting the balance right for your business, but there are some tools, and I'll pop that link on the resources slide for you at the end. Same question on hashtags. Great question. What do I think of TikTok as a future platform for marketing? Now, with any marketing comms channel, which is what all the social media platforms are, I think you need to go back to basics first. Understand your business, understand what you're selling, and understand what people are buying. Then think about where your target customers hang out, to make their decisions, to ask questions, to ask for recommendations, to do their research. And they are the platforms that you would need to be on. If certain kind of customers go to certain networking events, you would go to that networking event. If your customers are on Facebook, then you would go to Facebook to find and engage with them. Whenever there is a new platform out, with anything, any product or service, you always have early adopters, and that's great. It's always useful to see new platforms that are coming out, to join them, to try them and test them. But the answer as to whether it's a good future platform or useful for marketing or not is really down to your products and services and your audiences. It's always good to kind of have one eye on the future, and yet your feet firmly in the ground of where you need to do business right now. So yeah, try it, test it, join it. If you think it might be relevant, watch it, and then really spend more time on something if that's where your audience start to hang out. What do I think about HootSuite? Great question in terms of social media and managing content. HootSuite is a platform that I use. I use it primarily for Twitter, because not only can I schedule content, but I can also be listening in terms of what my competitors are doing and around keywords and use of hashtags. So I love HootSuite for that purpose. You can also use it with Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and other platforms, and it has some great analytics in there as well if that's what you're looking for. But I will share that a different scheduling platform I use, particularly for Instagram, is Planoly. I'll add that to the deck. And the reason I love Planoly is because I can visually see what the grid is going to look like ahead of posting. So I can upload all my images, I can rearrange them on the screen, I can see what things are going to look like before I schedule. And I just love the fact that it's from a desktop, because I'm much better at typing and cutting and pasting on a desktop than I am from a phone. So HootSuite, yes. Planoly, yes. I would argue with any app or tool for social media or content marketing, you think about your challenge and your problem first, and then you go and find a tool to help, rather than going, oh, someone's told me about Rev and Crowdfire and HootSuite and Planoly, and get immersed in too much tech. Work out your own workflow and your processes, then go and find a tool that's going to help you do it. I don't know if you listened to this bit earlier, but I'll say it again. Do I recommend using images on LinkedIn? I've read that it's a big no-no to use them too much. There are lots of myths around social media platforms. There are lots of, the algorithm likes this, the algorithm likes that. Very rarely do the platforms actually tell us what the algorithms do like and don't like. We know that these platforms are continually being worked on by huge teams of engineers. There are some things that we do know, and that's in the news feed, and that we're more likely to see content that we regularly engage with. But in terms of, should we use an image, shouldn't we use an image? My answer to that is, as I said earlier, if you have an image that supports your message, then use it. For example, I said, if I'm saying, I'm at a great event today, a beautiful venue, why wouldn't I post an image of that beautiful venue? If I'm standing outside number 10 because I've been on a visit to number 10, why would I not post an image of it? That is going to engage with my audience And for me, engaging with my audience is far more important than engaging with an algorithm, because an algorithm is not going to book me as a speaker or book me as a consultant or buy my products. So I would focus on relevance and my audience first over someone says do this, someone says do that. That in all honesty, I think just becomes a little bit of a Chinese whisper sometimes. And your business, your product and service is probably very different from the person, from the next person. So test it yourself, you know, do your own testing. And your own answers are always in your own data. Most of the time I will say, well, it depends. So you have to decide for yourself on that one. I hope my kind of reasoning helps. Opinion on using ambassadors and influencers for your business. Again, it depends on your business, it depends on your products and services. I think it's important to keep an eye out now. The Advertising Standards Authority is clamping down on the use of ambassadors and influencers without making it very clear that you are using them. But they can be hugely important, and they have audiences of their own. So if you can work with them to spread the word and create awareness around your product or service, absolutely. But I would make sure that you, just as the same as I said, kind of having style guidelines, have your own guidelines of criteria for an ambassador and influencer. Work with them on how you're going to work together, maybe create some guidelines or some tips, and make sure that you're being fully transparent around it. I work with some clients that they're really important because they're talking about our products and services all the time, so why wouldn't we work with them? Just depend on what's relevant for you, but just take some planning and research as well. Great questions today. Do you share the same content over all social media platforms? Is this repetitive or effective? If you are using social media, you will notice that LinkedIn has a different vibe to Facebook, has a different vibe to Instagram. Instagram is very image-led compared to the others. Some people like video format. I think what's important is that you start with the idea and you focus on your audience, and that you do adapt it for the social media platform. Sometimes it can be relevant to share it on everything. Just go back to my business birthday. Why wouldn't I share that on every platform? I have different audiences on different platforms. Sometimes a more business piece of content may be relevant to share on LinkedIn versus my Instagram. Instagram is more kind of behind the scenes, formal than LinkedIn. I wouldn't worry about repeating your messages. You know, not the same thing all day, every day. But for example, I mentioned that I have a blog about hashtags. For some people in my audience, they may have already read that and know that. For some people, the lady that asked the question, she needs that blog right now. So I'm not just going to go, oh, I've written a great blog on hashtags and share it once. It's probably something that I'm going to share and share again because people are searching for that all the time. It's my piece of evergreen content. So I wouldn't worry about it. And people, honestly, it will be rare for people to think that you're repeating the same thing again and again. And you need to stay true to your business and your products and services rather than having everything completely different, because then people won't know what you do or what you stand for. That's all the questions I've got through answered, but we'll just stay on a couple of minutes to have a look. Thank you for those Q&A. I like it when there's lots of questions that come through. My next webinar is on the 14th of October on the topic of social selling. I'll be going back to basics on social selling 101. We haven't talked too much about Instagram stories or Facebook stories today, but I am doing a webinar on that in November. You will get emails and details about that. Just one quick question that's come through. What tools can you use to post well in advance? We've just talked about HootSuite, which covers all social media platforms. There are other tools out there like TweetDeck for Twitter, Buffer, MeetEdgar, Planoly for Instagram. Lots of tools out there that you can use for scheduling your evergreen content. You probably want to stay in the moment for your real-time content. So we have recorded. Thank you for listening. If you've got any questions afterwards, please feel free to find me on social media at Luan Wise. Pop me those questions and I'll be happy to answer them. Enjoy the rest of your day.